Hello, and welcome to the Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast, where we go through every single Dragonlance book, one chapter at a time. And by every single, I mean, well, really just thus far, the Chronicles, but eventually every single Dragonlance book. We are going through them a couple of chapters at a time, discussing the ins and outs and the details of everything there is to know. I'm one of your hosts, Shubham, and with me, as always, is my co-host, John. Hey, John.
Good morning.
Yeah, so today we are going to be discussing the beginning part of Book 2 of Winter Night. So Book 2 of Book 2. I really hate that they do that. It's so needlessly confusing to call them books within books. But I mean, whatever. What are you going to do? I'm not going to tell 1985 fantasy authors how to live their lives. But we're going to be starting with, as always, with the beginning of these chapters,
A poem.
a narrative poem by Michael Williams. Michael Williams, first off, good friend of mine, really nice guy, good friend with Margaret and Tracy, and so they let him basically write whatever he wants as weird narrative poems whenever he's deciding to stretch his wings, I guess. And as somebody who has always found poems and songs to be the least favorite part of fantasy reading for me, don't ask me anything about Tom Bombadil and Tolkien because I couldn't tell you because I skipped those chapters. This stuff has always just been a struggle for me to read and get through.
The summary is real easy. It's like, this is Laurana and her group. This is what they did. She kills a dragon lord. They get a dragon orb. Oh, and 2 of the Solamnic Knights die.
Yes.
That's the summary you take away from it. But reading it again just now, there are some things that stand out to me. One, it mentions minotaurs. And I know later on in Dragonlance, minotaurs become a thing.
Yes.
Which is funny because I think they're in a totally different part of the world than down in the polar region. But
I mean, they're sailors. They show up wherever they want.
Oh, okay.
So where does it say Minotaur? Because I know the Thanoi are down there. The Thanoi are like...
It says, down upon Minotaur, upon Ice Bear, and the swords whistled again bright on the corner of madness, the tunnel knee-high in arms.
Yeah, I got it. So basically, first off, they introduced the Thanoi, which is really cool. The Thanoi are these like sentient walrus men who live down in the polar areas. And they're this really just cool, very unique Dragonlance enemy. And of course, here, they literally don't say anything at all about the Thanoi. They're just kind of like, hey, did you play DL6? Here it is. You know?
In the poem, they just said Thanoi. And I think maybe in the first or second chapter of book 2, they might mention walrus men.
Yeah. The thing is, the Minotaur are down there because the dragon armies have brought the Minotaur down there, and the white dragon armies are here. So these guys are sailors and pirates, so it makes sense that they would be really good at getting... I don't know how Minotaur ended up being like the archetypal sailors for Dragonlance. It's really cool and really unique to the setting, but also man cows on boats. These 2 pages of the Song of the Ice Reaper got expanded out into the Dragons of the High Lord Skies, the second book in the Lost Chronicles trilogy. And that book came out in like 2007. So almost
20 years.
595. Yeah, almost 20 years after this. Basically, they went back in like the 2000s and decided they wanted to retell the stories of the gaps of the Chronicles books. And the stuff that they had written this, or not written, but they had concepted this story out, and they didn't have room for it in the novel, so they just replaced it with a narrative poem to kind of just cover this instance.
Yeah.
Because the book itself is long, it's detailed, and it's honestly my favorite Dragonlance novel of all time. Yeah, and basically, you know, it's like, it talks about the rivalry between Sturm and Derek Crownguard. It talks about Kitiara changing her allegiance to Takhisis and meeting Lord Soth and all of the things that set up her character. And Sturm and, Aaron Talbot and Brian, the Donner, who basically are the 2 knights who die. It talks about their struggles with, faith in Paladine and faith in the knighthood and faith in themselves and just like the kinds of self-sacrifices it makes. It's such a beautiful, beautiful story. I'm really glad that they actually went back and wrote it, and it's worth your time to read.
The other thing I wanted to mention here was in the last stanza, in the second line, it says, the rest is short in the telling, destroying the eggs, the violent get of the dragons.
Yes.
And they just cover over the fact that they found a whole bunch of dragon eggs and they destroyed them.
Basically.
Which is interesting to me because later on in the story, it becomes a huge point of why there are no good dragons. Is all about dragon eggs. And they just totally cover up the fact here that they found a whole brood or a hatch of dragon eggs and just it's never mentioned again as far as I can tell.
Well, yeah, that's why they had to come back 20 years later to tell that story. effectively what's going on here is that Fealthas, who is the Dragon High Lord in charge of the White Dragon Army, he is like a dark elf from Sylvanesti in exile, and he's down there. He has been placed in charge of not necessarily incubation, but like storage of the evil dragon eggs, of the idea of like he's been down there to keep track of what Takhisis's army is doing with this stuff and to protect the eggs until they hatch. So the heroes find them and they're like, we need to get rid of all of this like yesterday. This is bad. They go through and smash them.
Okay.
Let me check in Dragonlance Classics to see if this is actually covered in Icewall Castle here.
In the module.
Yeah, give me 10 seconds. Right. So when these guys are going through the Icewall Castle in the modules, the heroes basically run into this place called the Egg Room. 3 white dragons are hanging out there on top of a pile of round leathery objects. And inside there are like basically all 37 white dragon eggs, about 6 months from hatching. So what's happening here is that, like I said, this poem is kind of a summary of the module itself of DL6. And what's going on is that they discover, first off, that white dragons are existing, what white dragons even are. And they go through, they expand, they try to attack Fealthas and kill him. They discover that there's a huge white dragon named Sleet who's there, and also that there's all these dragon eggs. And they're like, okay, you know what? If these 3 white dragons are protecting this brood of eggs, this is bad for all of us. So we have to destroy these dragons. And so they do. There is this weird parallel between this and what Gilthanas and Silvara find out later on when they discover what happened to the good dragon eggs. But it's also, you might even think of it as like keeping the balance, right? In a weird nihilistic way.
Yeah, that Takhisis is even controlling how many dragons there are by controlling the supply of eggs, even of her own, children, the dragons.
I don't think she's controlling it as much as she's just incubating them and trying to get them to hatch so that she can invade more. Because there's certainly egg broods everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But this makes sense. Underneath the capital of the ice dragons is going to be the ice dragon eggs, right?
Yeah. So the poem is Laurana Company. They get there. They kill High Lord Fealthas. 2 of the Brian and Aaron die, and they claim a dragon orb.
Yeah.
And that's where and we learn that the person who told us this, he must be a very important character because his name comes up 3 times in his own poem. So I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of him later. Ragart, who we will never hear from again, except for in the book, the follow-up book.
Yeah, Ragart, he's cool. He's just a character. He's like the shaman of the...
In the poem, like he says his name like 3 times. It's like, I am Ragart. You will remember me. And it's like, and we never heard from you again.
They have him in a lot of the other books that involve Icewall and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he definitely just exists. I think Michael Williams had basically said that this idea was to create almost a Viking saga style where the poem just names himself a bunch of times. And of course, Laurana finds a Frost Reaver and is given that, which is a really cool magic item that's owned by the Ice Folk. It's a heavy battle axe made out of like ice from the deep, dark glacier. It's like super dense and super hard. And I just always thought it was like, look, I like axes. The Frost Reaver is a really cool axe.
Reading it, you don't know it's an axe.
Yeah, again, this paragraph is definitely for the people who basically played the module to be like, that happened.
Or for the people who didn't, just a little summary of what happened in the module.
Yeah. It's just like in the beginning of Winter Night, there's this scene where Sturm and friends are giving the Hammer of Karas to the dwarves. And they're like, yeah, man, that was a tough adventure. Gosh, I guess we'll never hear about that again. That's what Dragons of Dwarven Depths was.
They do that in like 2 more chapters when they reintroduce Theros, the blacksmith.
Yeah.
They reintroduce him and he's like, you have a silver arm. And he's like, that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
Do they ever get back to it?
They wrote a book on Theros Ironfeld by a third-party author, but I don't remember what it was. I think that was his history, but not necessarily his how did he get the silver arm. And that's one of those things where I've always been like, man, I would love to know this, but then also like,
This is one of the mysteries that makes the setting so charming.
Yeah, it's just like, whatever. Do we really need to know how he got it? It would be cool if they just show up out of nowhere and he's just like, yeah, I understand all this stuff. And
that's for 2 episodes from now.
Yeah, we will cross that bridge when we get to it.
Chapter 1, The Flight from Icewall.
Yes. So we're here. We're leaving Icewall. We pick up the story with Flint being painfully seasick on top of this boat and just like dying.
He thinks he's dying.
Yeah. He's like, who is it? And Tasselhoff's right there. He grabs his hand and he's like, lad, I'm glad you've come to say farewell. I'm dying, lad. I'm going to Rayorix. It's like, and Taz's like, I beg your pardon? What? Flint's like, Rayorix, I'm going to the arms of Rayorix. Taz's like, no, we're not. We're going to Sancris, unless you know an inn. I mean, like, us, Sturm, the Rayorix arms? Rayorix, the god of dwarves, you doorknob. Oh, that Rayorix. And Flint's like, I'm going to give you my hat. And Taz is like, what are you going to do for a hat then? He's like, oh, I won't need a hat where I'm going. He's like, well, you might in Sancris.
Yeah.
And Taz is like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, buddy. Like, I nearly died once. That was fun.
And then he's like, you know, you're not dying. You're only seasick.
I've been infected by a serious disease and I'm dying. Screw all of you.
Yeah.
It's a really, after the nightmare, it is such a fun little bit of levity between these two, just being like having a laugh.
We could have left you back in Iceball, you know, with the walrus men. And
yeah, and Flint's like, I'm going to kill you.
we get a little summary.
Yeah.
Of what was told in the poem. It's been a month since the shared dream. Came away from Icewall Castle with a dragon orb. 2 knights has died. They defeated Felthos, a powerful dragon lord. And that they were on a ship bound for Sancris.
Yeah.
Other than that, everything was fine. No problems. I'm sure from here, everything's going to be smooth sailing.
It's not even smooth sailing now. I mean, they're sailing into some rough waters. It's interesting to note that dragon orb, by the way, is the white dragon orb, and each of the dragon orbs, as we know, have these spirits of dragons inside them. That's why the Sylvanesti one was green, because it had the spirit of the green dragon viper when it was created.
Interesting.
And it's just neat. This orb is more of a Deus Ex Machina, or like, not a Deus Ex, but like a, what is the word for the item? A MacGuffin. This is much more of a MacGuffin than anything. It doesn't get used for anything. It's more for just moving the plot along. It definitely comes with them going forward, because right before the Cataclysm, Felthos who was like basically dark elf wizard who became, like banished and then became the High Lord of the Dragon Armies. He was asked to take the orb of the Tower of Waerith and keep it safe from the King Priest, who was going through and invading all the towers and taking them during the Lost Battles right before the Cataclysm. So Felthos takes it and runs off to Icewall Castle and just keeps it and hangs out with it until Laurana and friends come, kill him, and take it. So here we are. They have this dragon orb, and they had to deal with that dream, and now they're just on this boat dealing with a jerk.
The other thing that the dragon orb that they found is that they found a silver dragon frozen in ice. And on his back was what appeared to be a Solamnic knight. And in his hand was the base of a dragon lance.
Yeah.
A couple interesting things I thought that will come up later is that Derek or Brian says, well, we know that there have been some Solamnic knights that turn evil. And that made me think of Lord
Toth,
who we're going to meet, which is surprising because I haven't thought about him in 20 years, but there he is. I still knew.
He's the most famous Dark Knight in D&D, honestly.
Yeah. And then we have to be reminded that Elistan is here because he isn't mentioned in the poem at all. And Elistan says, well, he doesn't feel evil. And then he disappears once again into the background. Taz hints again about his conversation and the events he had with Fizban Paxarthus. But hey, this seems familiar to me, and I seem to remember silver dragons being ridden by Hugh. I don't know where, though.
Yeah.
And then Sturm says, well, Huma rode a dragon.
Yeah, and then, of course, Derek is like, yeah, and I remember my mother telling me to leave sweet cakes for the white-robed old one who comes to our castle at Yule time. All right, buddy. Thank you, Santa Claus.
It's crazy to me that you would say that when you were, look, the evidence is right in front of you in a giant block of ice. And it's like, well, my mom told me about Santa Claus. And it's like, yeah, well, if we were standing in front of frozen Santa Claus, I'd believe that Santa Claus was real.
It's weird because Derek has got this weird pragmatic kind of like atheism, but it's not even atheism. It's just like stubborn. Just like he is so like power hungry and concerned with his own status and his own skills. He literally does not care about the actual quest or about evil or good or any of this stuff. He's just like, look, man.
No.
I just want to be the head of the knight. That's what I've been trained for. That's what I've been raised for. All of this is a waste of my time.
Well, yeah, he's not even interested. You would think that like this is a huge part of lost history to the Knights of Solamnia.
Dude, I don't know about you, but if I was literally raised from birth believing in the Platinum Dragon Paladine and the Order and Huma and Knights and, all these stories, and I saw a gigantic 40-foot long silver dragon frozen in ice, first off, after dragons haven't existed for thousands of years, and I thought they were myth, and then there's one of my own knights on the back, I would lose my goddamn mind.
Yeah.
Seeing the face of God, right? Like,
it should be a faith strengthening event. It should be this confirms all my beliefs. And Derek's just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
He literally orders Sturm to leave, even though Gilthanas has made it so that Sturm can grab the shaft of the Dragonlance, and they ignore him.
Yeah, because he's just an elf and a mage. That's like not even human. That's like just. First off, it's also interesting that they're like, oh, it's a huge silver dragon, 40 feet long. Nowadays, 40 feet's like not even a youthful dragon. But it's more like this fact that this thing was frozen in mid-flight. Like, what kind of magic trapped this thing, right? Like, that's insane. And this guy's got basically the broken lance there. And these guys only know that evil dragons exist.
Yeah. They don't even like Huma, who's supposed to be the founding of their order. They're like, oh, he was a hedge knight. He was low ranking. It doesn't matter. I always thought Huma started the Solamnic Knights, but the way they talk about it.
No, he didn't. Vinus Solamnus started the Solamnic Knights.
Okay.
Huma was just the most important knight, or like the knight of legend, who basically, Huma starts out as a commoner, becomes the knight of the crown, goes off on this adventure, and ends up falling in love with the silver dragon and then fighting against Takhisis and being the one to drive her away, which is why he became legendary.
Got it. Okay.
So the knights were already established when Huma was doing a thing.
He's just the most important.
Yeah, he's basically like
Solamnic Knight ever to exist.
Yeah, he's just literally the archetype of all Solamnic knights, right? Like the greatest knight of all time, the most honorable. Basically, as like, it's 3,000 years of time go by, the legend becomes kind of like, you should be like, it's like Saint George in ancient English history, or Saint whoever, it's like, you should be like this person who was a man of God and did all the things and was the greatest of his time. Like when you read all the like Knights Templar stories or the King Arthur stories, that kind of like, they might have been a real dude at one point, but then the legend just becomes into like this archetype of everything that is good about people. I don't know, the story of Ram in Hinduism or whatever. But yeah, so like Huma is basically meant to be the paragon of all ideals. And Sturm believes it, but Derek Crownguard looks at Huma and is like, whatever, dude was a scrub who was just in the right place. He's not even like high ranking enough to be a Rose Knight. Who cares about him?
Yeah.
This is, though, it's like, how little faith does Derek have in the Knights and in their belief system? And that's what part of what High Lord Skies goes into, is that this guy literally he's a knight by profession and because he wants the power. He doesn't believe in the order or the god or any part of this. He's just here because he's a career military.
Yeah. Sturm has a moment here where this is where we learn why he didn't get his knighthood. It's because it turned out all the knights were more like Derek than they were like Sturm. And so he didn't follow through. He's like, the companions did more good in the 5 years fighting evil than the entire order of Knights of Solamnia has done. And he even says, I even admire Raistlin, right? Where is it? Right. Let me see if I can find where he says.
I never thought I'd say it, but I miss Raistlin.
Yeah.
Even Raistlin, in some way, I can't understand. He could tell us what all this means. Sturm is up there. He jumps up. And first off, Gilthanas tries to go up there. He uses his fire powers to melt the ice to climb up, to try to go in and melt it away from the lance. He tries to grab the lance, and the lance stays in the knight's hand. And Tad's like, well, but you break the fingers. And Sturm's like, I will cut you before I desecrate the body of a dead knight, right? And so Sturm decides instead to climb up there, and he's like, let me give it a try. The knight relaxes its hand and gives it to Sturm. And that is a moment of faith right there. That is a moment of, you have been chosen to carry this burden into the new world, to bring hope back. This is like such a pivotal and poignant moment in the story, and it's so meaningful and just resonant. Like Sturm, who's not even a knight, and like he never went through the testing. He's just wearing the armor, and he's been given the dragon lance by one of his brothers in arms from many thousands of years ago.
There's a parallel here to LDS Mormon Church.
There always is.
Yeah, there always is. Sturm here is a stand-in for Joseph Smith once again, this time instead of Goldmoon, in the sense that this chapter talks a lot about how the Knights of Solamnia have missed the point
Yes.
of what it means to do good. And Sturm, who is a nobody, who doesn't have the training and is not official, is the one. And there is a story, and it's in the Book of Mormon, where Joseph Smith translated it, and he
Yes.
whatever you believe about how that happened. But in it, it says that there will come a time when a book of scriptures will be given to an ignorant person, and the ignorant person will say, "This isn't for me. I'm ignorant. Let's go take it to a learned person." And then the learned person will take it and not be interested in it. He'll say, "How can I translate it? What can I do?" And throw it away. And we're seeing that right here. That's exactly what happened. Is Derek is the real knight. He's the expert. He could have had the opportunity to take the lance. All he had to do was walk up and grab it. And he says, "No, Huma is garbage. The lance is garbage. It means nothing." And so it's given to the one person who in the story doesn't know anything and is ignorant and doesn't feel worthy, Sturm. And that's a story that Mormons tell about their founder as well, is that he was not worthy and he didn't feel, and he wasn't the person who should have been doing it. He wasn't the trained expert, but yet that's who God chose to move his work forward.
Right.
The parallel, again, it's stark, is that Paladine is giving to those who are worthy of it, not who are recognized in the world as worthy of it.
Right. There's this idea of being of faith does not necessarily mean you have to be the most knowledgeable or the most wise or the most, advanced in your theological side. It just means being of firm conviction and of like honor and of justice. And like Sturm's character is all about that. Like he is just, that's his entire arc, is he is a person who is living a lie, but because his belief system is so strong, because he is so focused on doing the right thing and living by these precepts, that he is representing more of the concept of what this God is teaching than literally anybody who actually does this regularly. And the story, that's what like Hickman trying to tell us here is like, look, if you embody the vows of what you're doing and you are living to the best of your ability, you will be chosen by the gods to not just deliver this message, but to bring hope to the world. That's the whole point. I love this part. Like, Lorana's like, look, he's giving it to you. Go ahead, Sturm, take it. Don't you see? He's giving it to another knight. And Sturm's like, which I'm not. But perhaps it is indicative. Perhaps it is evil. And it's like, that's Sturm's doubt right there. He's like, look, I'm not good enough for this. I'm not even a knight. It doesn't matter, though. He took the lance anyways, because he's like, you know what? This is my burden to carry. If this is what I've been chosen to do, this is what I'm chosen to do. And of course, Tad's like, Flint, did you see the corpse come alive? And the dwarf's like, no, and neither did you. Let's get the hell out of here. Sturm is basically super bitter about the knighthood because he wanted to join it. He wants to believe in it, but he's realizing that it's all just man-made corruption, power-hungry people who are ossified in their beliefs and in their nobility structure, people who don't want to change, because changing the status quo is dangerous to their power base, right? Like, so these guys are just like, effectively, Derek has made the calculation here that if Paladine does exist and the story of Huma is true, that is bad for him. That is bad for Derek Crownguard, because that means that anybody can become a knight and become a noble and become the greatest knight of all time, instead of having been born to it and having been raised and given the hereditary Rose Knight and stuff. And he's like, none of this can happen. And Sturm here, even though he's from an old family, he is from an old disgraced family. It's wild because basically Sturm was raised by a deeply observant, Orthodox, almost zealot-like mom who taught him all of the faith and all of the lessons of Huma and everything. And he goes back home and he's talking to all the people who basically lived a knighthood life the whole life. And they're like, exactly like, you believe in the Easter Bunny? What the hell, man? And Sturm's like, yeah, with my whole heart, I believe that eggs come every Easter. And they're all like, you are high. And here it is. The Easter Bunny is frozen in the wall. And these guys are like, yeah, okay. If you say so. There is some level of almost ego that has to happen for you to look at something in the face and deny it. Like to see something exist in its face and be like, this numinous moment is irrelevant to my point. That thing is dead and gone and frozen. Let's move on.
Yep. And we're going to get a lot more of Derek, and you're going to find him even more endearing as we move along. He's just such a lovable character.
Yes, lovable and wholesome. So Lorana's got the broken lance wrapped in her coat, and they're here on the boat, and she's still got Wormslayer, which is Tanis' sword. and they're taking the boat to go to Sankrist, which is over by southern Urgoth. So from where they started, it is to the north and west. These guys are just like, boating upwards, and they're going there. And the captain's like, I've been hearing weird things about Urgoth lately. The people are saying it's filling up with elves, and I don't get it. I haven't been there, and I don't know if it's true or not. And Laurent's like, elves? The captain's like, yeah, I heard they're fleeing their homeland, driven off by dragon armies or something. So Laurent and Gilthanas have a moment where they sit and say, like, man, is it going to be our guys? And Gil's like, no, it's probably going to be the Sylvanesi, right? Like,
because he met and talked with Elhana.
Yeah.
And so he knows that they fled to southern Urgoth.
And they see a bright flash that catches the sun rays, and they look down and they see a strange cloud to the south. And the captain turns, looks at it, and sends his mate up the mast to look through his spyglass, and he's like, if it's a cloud, I ain't seen anything like it. Taz runs up, grabs the spyglass, and stares through it. And he's like, oh, dear.
It's a dragon.
And he goes back down, and he gives back the spyglass to the dude he stole from the sailor. And then he heads down, goes to Sturm. He's like, oh, by the way, dragon.
And that is how the first chapter ends, is that they didn't get away scot-free from...
They certainly did not.
Iceball. And you never do. In these books, you never do.
Oh, yeah, no. It's like, put the monkey in the tree, get him out of the tree, right? Like, well, no. My friend Cam Banks once told me the structure for these adventure stories is put a monkey in a tree, throw rocks at him, and then get him out of the tree, right? So it's like, you've got this adventure arc, so these guys are getting the rocks thrown at them now. So they're being chased by a white dragon. And as we learn, we'll find out what happened, I guess, in chapter 2.
Before we get to that, if you haven't already and you have the ability to, please consider supporting the podcast on Patreon. Patrons get access to exclusive content and each episode about a week early. And you can find it at patreon.com/Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast. There will also be links in the show notes. And then I want to shout out to our $5 patrons who continue to grow. We have Alexander Louis, Nicholas Campo, Swar Dango, Chris Andrew, Jason Bledsoe, Brandon Brown, and Dylan Lloyd. Thank you guys so much.
We couldn't do this without your help.
I also want to announce that with the release of this episode, the Discord will be live, and there is a link of that in the show notes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you want to yell at me about my Dragonlance opinion, this is the place to go.
Direct contact with the expert himself.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what we need. And at the end of August of this year, I will be at Gen Con as well for the release of the third Dragonlance novel, Dragons of Eternity, by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, which is book 3 of the new Dragonlance saga that I got to help work on. It's the coolest thing ever, and I'm insanely excited for it. And I look forward to being able to actually read the real copy of it, because let me tell you, man, being an alpha and beta reader of a book is a lot harder than you think it is, because you have to read a lot of garbage to get to the really good books. Turns out, like, authors are really, like, you think an author is really, really good at writing, but no, they're good at polishing and stuff later. But like sometimes the original writing is real, like they're still figuring out what the story is and where it's going, and hey, this scene doesn't really work, or this doesn't fit the character, or this doesn't fit the world, or we have to actually maybe make some combat in this scene because otherwise it's boring. But it was such an exciting process, and I cannot wait to talk about that later on. But right now, we're going to move into chapter 2 of book 2, The White Dragon Captured. We have this really cool picture of a ship kind of going overboard, so that bodes well. Given a POV of the White Dragon here, named Sleet. And there's a lot of speciesism going on here, but Sleet is actually a gigantic dragon, one of the chosen of Takhisis, the main dragon of the White Dragon armies. But here we are. She was a white dragon, a species of dragon smaller than the other dragons dwelling on Krynn. Born and bred in the Arctic regions, these dragons were able to withstand extreme cold and control the icebound southern regions of Ansalon. And so they're the fastest dragons. The High Lords use them for scouting missions. They're like, effectively, a white dragon's whole gimmick is that they breathe ice and they are frozen, like cold. The other ones who breathe ice are the silver dragons, who are the parallels to them in the light side. We're told here that the Dark Queens received a report that Sylvanesi had been invaded by some random adventurers who managed somehow to defeat Cyan Bloodbane and take a dragon orb. She was none too pleased about this. So the Dark Queen basically orders Sleet and the White Dragons to head north of the Plains of Dust to find that orb and figure out what's going on. And like Sleet's like, this is dumb and I don't like any part of this, but I'm here to follow my orders, because we're given to know that white dragons are effectively stupid. They're the dumbest dragons. They basically just exist here to be beasts of instinct rather than intellect, which is to say they are driven by wanting food and impulse. Thank you. That's a word. I always thought that was a little, even a dumb dragon is still going to be smarter than anything and old and have been around forever. But a lot of this feels like, Tracy Hickman trying to look at the monster manual and justify the stats that Gary Gygax made. But like when you look at the white dragon stats in the first edition monster manual, basically you're told, although not as intelligent as most other dragons, they're evil and greedy as any. And so they're basically meant to be not dumb, but just not very smart. Their intelligence is average low, as opposed, I don't know, like a silver dragon, exceptional intelligence, or like a green dragon, which has average to very intelligence. The evil dragons in Gygax's reading are very much driven by instinct, ego, and impulse.
Some base desires.
Yeah, it's like a very Hindu idea of like, evil is not necessarily evil because it does bad things. Evil is evil because it's focusing more on self-enjoyment and pleasing the ego more than in doing good and living a good life, or like, being a member of the community. It's just like, what helps me the best? Yeah, so like white dragons, kind of janky.
So they went to the Plains of Dust. They couldn't find anything. She goes back home and she realizes that while she was gone, the other dragon orb she was tasked with keeping track of has also, it's like Felthos was dead and the orb was gone. Takhisis is very bad. Now, there are 2 orbs out in the world. And so she sends Sleet back out to capture the one that Laurana has just taken.
The orbs are so powerful and they're basically sentient magical items. They care about their own survival and their own, like, protection. The idea that Sleet could actually control this and protect it is kind of silly, because there's no way Sleet's got the intellect to be able to handle this.
I get the feeling it hasn't been activated, maybe because no one's touching it or trying to interact with it.
Right.
And I don't know if they have to be activated. It seems vague, right? Because they're mostly MacGuffin devices. You can do whatever you want with them, to move the storyline.
This is a funny paragraph, though. Sleet is heading over the Syrian Sea, trying to catch up to that ship, and Sleet was presented with an interesting intellectual problem, and she was not prepared to handle it. Perhaps because the inbreeding necessary to create a reptile that could tolerate cold weather, white dragons are the lowest intelligence among dragonkind. Sleet had never needed to think much on her own. Felthos had always told her what to do. Consequently, she was considerably perplexed over her current problem as she circled the ship. How could she get the orb? Oh my god, dude. Like, there's a lot of like their narrative commentary going on here. Like, Takhisis created the dragons. There's no inbreeding necessary at all. She was just like, you will be the cold ones. And that was it.
Chapter just describes her thought process where she's like, well, what if I did this? Oh, no, I can't do that. Then that, well, what if I do this? Oh, no, then the ship will sink and then I can't get it. Well, what if I do this? And then it switches to the sailors' point of view, and it's like everyone was panicked and then nothing happened, and then the dragon fear kind of wore off.
They're just hanging around and the dragon's not doing anything. But yeah, like this one, the white dragon considered sending another telepathic message to her queen asking for help, but Sleet hesitated to remind the vengeful queen of either her presence or her ignorance. So she just followed the ship all day, hanging above it, pondering. Just as the sun setting, Sleet had an idea. Without stopping to think, she just acted on it. Yeah, like I said, impulse control, none. The crew is horrified. They grab their weapons. They've got their archers. They're waiting. And Elstan's praying. And Derek says something very important here. I have more faith in my sword than that old man and his god. And Sturm's like, the knights have always honored Paladine. And Derek's like, I honor his memory.
Yeah.
I find this talk of Paladine's return disturbing, Brightblade. Like, having a god here would be very inconvenient for Derek Cranguard's plans.
And then he rebukes Sturm. He's like, stop believing in fairy tales.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing, man?
He's like, yeah, you might be wanting to think about this when the question of your knighthood arises. And Sturm's like, I hate you. I hate you with every fiber of my being. I hate you. But yeah, so the dragon's just hanging out, and the ship is just like, stuck because the dragon's wings, because it's hovering, is taking all the wind away. So there's no wind in the sails. So they're just hanging out. And they're like, what do we do, guys? And one of the sailors like, can we just throw these people overboard? They don't care about us.
Throw them in a boat and the dragon will leave us alone. The current is pushing the boat towards southern Urgoth. Finally, the dragon dives. Sturm orders everyone below decks. He has to punch the captain to get the captain to take his orders. And the dragon does blow ice, a cold blast. And it does is Sleet freezes the sails and the rigging.
Yeah.
Basically, the captain explains, with all that ice on there, it's going to break the mast, the sails are going to tear, and we won't be able to do anything. This boat's just going to be moved into the rocks, and we're going to sink.
Yeah, but it is really cool that we get to see the moment where Laurana realizes that the dragons have different powers. Because she's like, the white dragons don't breathe flame, they breathe ice. Elistan, your prayers were answered. And it's like, and the captain's like, no, that's actually not better. This is not better at all. Like, we're going to be screwed. And then
go back to Sleet, and Sleet's congratulating herself. She's like, I'm so smart. Now the ship is just going to wash up on the shore, and then I can take the dragon orb out of it.
Yeah.
And then she looks ahead and realizes, oh, wait, there's a bunch of jagged rocks. The ship is going to sink before it gets to the shore.
And she's such an idiot. It's interesting because like the people are trying to get out of because they've all gone under the hatch to protect themselves from the dragon that thought they were going to be fire, and they try to push it up, and they're like, "Uh-oh, there's like a foot of ice on top," and it's like, "Oh, we did not consider this."
And it took so long for Sleet to act that now it's dark, and we learn here that I thought dragons could see in the dark. I thought they had infravision or whatever it's called.
Well,
for the point of this story, Sleet does not have night vision.
It is really interesting that these guys are hyper inconsistent about night vision for all of these creatures and characters throughout the novel. They cannot decide who does and doesn't. It's just like, is it convenient for you to have night vision? You have night vision.
And it is convenient for Gilthanas and Laurana to have night vision here because they both shoot arrows at the dragon.
Well, here's the thing. All dragons see equally well in daylight or darkness, infravision up to 60 feet. They have excellent sight, smell, and hearing. So yeah, like Sleet should be able to see just fine. So it's not necessarily that Sleet can't see, it's that Sleet's just an idiot. And maybe her sight's just not as good as the elven sight, but it just strikes me as like, dude, are you for real? Like, you can... She's like, cursed, night seeing elves.
She could even hear the cries and shouts of the sailors, but she couldn't see. Diving low over the water, she hoped to encase the miserable creatures in ice until daylight. Then she heard another more frightening sound in the darkness, the twanging of bowstrings. And she gets hit. Her wing is injured. She gets angry and upset. She's been doing this all day. So she just says, forget it. I'm going to go home. The boat's going to sink. A drowned orb is just as good as a hidden one. If my boss asks, I'll be like, yeah, it's hidden. It's hidden on the bottom of the ocean.
It's fine. Everything's fine. Situation normal. And Sleet's just like, you know what? I'm over this.
The ship sinks. Almost all the crew and the companions make it ashore with the orb and the shaft of the Dragonlance. The bodies of Aaron and Brian don't make it. And as they're trying to regather themselves on the beach, they're surrounded by elves.
Yeah.
Not friendly elves. Gilthanas tries to greet them. He gets clubbed over the head and knocked out. We learn that these are Althana's people, the Sylvanesti.
Yeah.
They are not happy to see their cousins.
Hell no, they're not.
Call them polluted and spies. Sturm and Derek are about to fight. Everyone's about to fight. But Laurana mentioned, she's like, hey, I'm a princess. Also, even the evil races do not fight amongst themselves like elves. The good race does. And then she says, look, we have this dragon orb. We can use it to defeat them.
Of course, we don't find it unusual that you're traveling in the company of humans.
Yeah.
No, the Sylvanesti are none too pleased to see the Qualinesti. And they're just like, screw you guys.
They verify the story. There's this thing where, like, if you're lying, we're going to go double check. So we'll ask the sailors just up the shore. Everything pans out. And then she says, like, you just beat up a crown prince, basically, of Quolinost.
Yeah. It's like basically these guys are like, look, this is the royal family, and
Maybe that wasn't a good idea. And it says, okay, well, we'll heal him. And says, Lana says, we don't need to. We have a human cleric. Elistan pops his head, and here I am.
just remember me. Hey guys.
The Sylvanesti refuse to believe they won't allow any human charlatan to act on an elf, polluted Qualinest or not.
Yeah, that's funny.
Derek and Sturm argue because Derek thinks that Lorana's going to sell them out to the Sylvanesti.
I do like, though, that the racism of the Sylvanesti is so strong that even though they hate the Qualinesti with every fiber of their being, they're sitting here going like, I find the news of this paladin impossible to believe, Lady Lorana, the elf leader said. All know the clerics vanished from Krynn when the gods turned their face from us. I do not know who this charlatan is or how he has tricked you into believing him, but we will not allow him to lay his human hands on an elf. It's like, it doesn't matter that 10 seconds ago I was beating that elf to a pulp. It's just like now it's an elf against those guys.
Yeah.
It's like we're learning the hierarchy here. Like, only I get to kill you.
I love this part because Flint is now.
Well, hang on. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, but Lorana follows up with even an elf who's an enemy. And even if the elf had killed my own father, the elf says grimly. It's like, we may hate you, but we hate them more.
There's a hierarchy of hate for Sylvanesti elves.
Oh, yeah. Good old racism. Let's go.
Derek is arguing with Sturm. He's saying, Lorana is going to betray us. And Flint has had it. He's too old for this. He's had it up to here. So he's soaking
Basically.
wet. He only reads to Derek's belt buckle, and he basically just like bumps up into him and says, "Hey, you, shut up."
Yeah, basically. He sits there and he's like, just starts scolding these guys. Like, you knights have lived in metal so long, it's shaking your brains to mush. If you had brains to begin with, which I doubt, I've seen that girl grow from a wee bit of a thing to the beautiful woman she is now. And I tell you, there isn't a more courageous, nobler person on Krynn. What's got you is that she just saved your hide, and you can't handle that. So it's both racism and toxic masculinity being thrown into Derek's face. King asshole, basically. Derek's like, I don't need dwarves or elves. And
before he can walk away, Lorana comes back, and we get a little info dump here. We learn that there is another group of elves, and we talked about this last month, the Kaganesti?
Mm-hmm. The Kaganesti.
The wild elves.
Yes.
This is the place where they live, Southern Urgoth. The Qualinesti and the Sylvanesti have come here, and they've started mistreating their cousins, who they consider to be barbaric primitives. They've enslaved them. Now, they're not outright where they've captured them, enslaved them, but basically it's
indentured servitude.
They're very poor, and all of a sudden, these people show up with all the fine goods that you could ever imagine, and if you want them, all you have to do is do everything they tell you to. So it's like, yeah, it's basically, hey, do you want a shiny gold coin? Do you want this comb? Do you want some nice leather or, cloth?
It's almost offensive. And like, I think that Margaret and Tracy are really trying to make the point here that this is really just offensive, the way that the two higher elves basically are treating the wild elves. Because like, if you think about it, in D&D, there are 3 sub-races of elves as of this original in the OD&D, in like first edition in the earliest days, which are the high elves, who are the, Galadriels of the world, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pale-skinned super mages who are hyper noble and like tell you all the things. And then there are the wood elves, who are like the Legolases and the stuff that run around and live in the jungle. And then there's the wild elves, who are like the crazy barbaric ones. But like, it's still been the same. 3,000 years have passed for the wild elves as it has for the Sylvanesti and Qualinesti. These people are noble. They're very like, they have civilization, they have civility and dignity.
It's a different kind of culture.
Yeah, it's just they've chosen to live in harmony with the land the way the elves were built to do, right? Like the Kaganesti, if anything, are living more up to what Paladine expected of his creation than the Sylvanesti and Qualinesti. Like the Kaganesti live in harmony with nature. They live in the woods. They live in the life of like, holding up the essence of what Paladine set them out to do. The Sylvanesti are there to subjugate nature and force it to be what their definition of good is, in almost the Nathaniel Hawthorne sense of like, the British come to the New World and force it to have trained gardens and clean lanes and work in what the paradise of God would look like. And the Qualinesti are living this kind of halfway between, nature entwined, but they're also trying to like dominate it, but not quite. But like compared to the Kaganesti, the Qualinesti and Sylvanesti are basically like they've treated them incredibly poorly. We see this in the novel, The Kaganesti, and in the Elfin Nations trilogies, where basically the Kaganesti are treated like not just slaves, but as being lesser intelligence, being ignorant, being just not good for anything but manual labor. And Laurana is trying to explain what these people are. And she's like, look, the Kaganesti have always been poor in material wealth, poor by our standards, but not by theirs. They live in forests and mountains, taking what they need. They're gatherers and hunters. They raise no crops and forge no metal. When we arrived, our people were rich with our golden jewelry and steel weapons, and their young people came over to us to learn the secrets. And my people took advantage of their poverty, and now they work as slaves among us. And now the Kaganesti elders are like, we knew it. Like, we don't trust those guys. That's why we don't live with you.
Yeah.
We left and we're here on our own, and you come to our land. You've taken our stuff, and now you've taken our children. It's insane. It's completely insane. Like, first off, how long have they? I mean, they've been here for a matter of months that they've already come in and just invaded and taken over.
And they did not come like refugees asking for assistance. They basically just came to a place that's not theirs and just assumed that it was theirs.
Came as colonizers, basically. They came,
Yeah.
they colonized the place. They basically dropped anchor and did not act like people who had just been thrown out of their homeland. Were more like, oh, you guys have been keeping the seat warm for us. Perfect. We're now here to just take it.
Yeah.
Kaganesti are like, excuse the hell me? Who are you and what's your problem?
Yeah.
We're not here for this.
And we're going to see more of this in the next couple of chapters as well. But this relationship between these three elven cousins, and
yes,
it's not good. It's not healthy.
No, it's real bad. It's like just, but this also leads you down to believe like, wait, then why are these the good races? And that's also Tracy's kind of like a poignant point here, which is like being exceedingly good leads to like authoritarianism and leads to being blind to the actual world you live in. And it ends up being as bad as just being out and out evil because you're just dominating authoritarian and effectively fascist. These guys are obviously racist. We can see the few, like, you're not pure enough for us, but you're more pure than them. It's just this real hideous kind of like taken to the nth degree.
It's subtle in that good isn't a racial trait.
Yeah.
Good isn't something you're born with. It's actions you take. It's things you do. You have to practice to be good.
Yeah, basically.
If you are just saying, well, I was made by Paladin, so therefore I am good, but you don't do anything that makes you good.
You're not.
This is a faith or works, right?
Right. It's a Protestant ethos right here, right? Like,
this is Tracy saying, no, it's works. It's not just faith. It's works.
Yeah. It's not good enough to be born into this. You got to practice it.
Yeah.
And I think that's we're seeing this parallel with Derek Crownguard as well.
Exactly.
Look, it's not good enough to be born a Rose Knight. You got to act like a Rose Knight. It's not good enough to be born a high-ranking Sylvanesti. If you're not acting good, you're not a good person. If you're not making the world a better place by your actions, what are you doing? That's a really important lesson that I think Winternight really drives home.
And we see again and again in the story how the authors highlight people who you wouldn't expect, right? Goldmoon restored the gods. She's the first cleric. Elistan was a enslaved prisoner, and he's the first restored priest of Elistan. Sturm is going to be the first Dragonlance knight, not Derek Crownguard. Again and again, it's people who are doing the things that make you good that are actually seen as good, not people who you would think of as good. It's a very kind of old school Christian ethos, right? Where who did Jesus say he was going to hang out with, right? Debtors, gamblers, and prostitutes. Those were the people. He's like, those are the people who need it, and those are the people who are trying to be good.
Right.
And so that's where you're going to find me. And who were his apostles, right? They were
fishermen
and tax collectors and
and just like the random low workers.
Low working class people. It was not the Sadducees or the Pharisees, and it wasn't the Romans. That's not who he came for.
Right. And like, you see that message in Dragonlance over and over and over again, which is that like, who are this group of heroes that's been tasked with bringing good and justice back to the world? It is a group of ragtags who have been basically outcast from their own societies, who are living together, trying to do the right thing in deed, if not in name, like Sturm Brightblade, not a knight, but living up to the ideals. Tanis Half-Elven, who is like the most noble of all of them, but he's like a half-breed bastard, born of rape. And like, he's just like outcast in both of his communities. And he's just here like, look, it doesn't matter where you came from. It matters what you do. And that, if anything, is like the most important lesson Dragonlance has to teach. And I mean, that's part of why I love this.
Found families, right?
Yeah.
Kitiara might have raised Caramon, but at some point we'll find later on that Raistlin and Caramon both come to the decision that this found family is more important than my flesh and blood. And Sturm decides his found family, he's regretting it here. He already says, he says, oh, I'm a Solamnic knight. His family, his recognized family, is the Knights of Solamnia. And again, he's going to choose his found family.
Yeah.
And that's the right choice.
I mean, the book drives home very importantly that you are what you make of yourself and not where you come from. And I think that is an incredibly important lesson.
Back to the story. Wilder elves met with druids. I think, are druids not in Krynn anymore? They're like a lost race, but at one point...
Well, druids are like, they were meant to be a class of this era. Like, druid is like a type of cleric, and more than like, it's a cleric that deals with nature more than like a people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are druids in Dragonlance, but like, it's weird because like we're told that druids don't exist as in Dragonlance, but the intention was the druidic class as explained in first edition D&D doesn't exist.
Got it.
But like druidic skills here, it's a weird choice of word, and it's capitalized because I guess they had an intention, but it didn't follow through. But effectively what we're taking to mean here is that this is a person, there's a wild elf who shows up here and starts mixing things into a small clay cup.
Silvara.
Yeah, Silvart is what she's known as by the other elves. But basically they sit there and go like, she's mixing up a potion, and we're meant to believe that she's like a kind of like medicine woman. She's not doing any modern futuristic healing or casting spells or anything. She's just mixing herbs and handling things. Laurana is like, yeah, that's our healer and she's like, Kaganess, you're known for their druidic skills. Ella sounds like Wilder Elf is a suitable name. He's never seen any intelligent being on Krynn look so wild looking. She's dressed in leather breeches, tucked into leather boots, a shirt obviously cast off with some elf lord hung from her shoulders. She was pale and too thin, undernourished. Her matted hair was so filthy it was impossible to distinguish its color. But the hand that touched Gilthanas was slender and shapely. Concern and compassion for him was apparent in her gentle face. So here it is, the noble savage,
A different noble savage, not Goldwound and Riverwind, a different noble savage.
A whole lot of noble savages going on in this story.
Laurana kind of makes a friend with her, a little short connection. And she says, oh, they call me Silvart, but my real name is Silvara. I will treat your brother. And Laurana says, thank you. The Sylvanest, the elves have agreed to take Laurana and Gilthanas and her group back to her dad.
Yeah.
Who she learns is here. So they start moving into the forest. And then the chapter ends with Flint complaining to Sturm. And I'm just going to read it here. He says, we have to use the dragon orb. We don't know anything about it. And Sturm says, the knights will learn. The future of the world rests on this. Humph, the dwarf sneezed, casting a terrified glance at the night dark waters. He shook his head gloomily. All I know is I've been drowned twice, stricken with a deadly disease. You were seasick. Stricken with a deadly disease. Flint repeated loudly, and sunk. Mark my words, Sturm Brightblade. Boats are bad luck to us. We've had nothing but trouble since we set foot in that blasted boat on Crystalmar Lake. That was where the crazed magician first saw the constellations had disappeared, and our luck's gone straight downhill from there.
He's not wrong.
As long as we keep relying on boats, it's going to go from bad to worse.
Before we go out of this chapter, though, I want to refer to one other thing, which is like, this elf introduces herself as Silvart, and Laurana's like, that means silver-haired in Kaganess, doesn't it? And then, like, later on, she warms up and she's like, Laurana is kind to this poor noble savage and is like trying to, show her like gratitude for taking care of Gilthanas and for like all of this, other things. And she's trying to give some sense of humanity to this. Silvart's like, I'll stay with him, mistress, if it's your command. And Laurana's like, it's not my command, it's my wish. And my name is Laurana. Don't call me mistress. And the elf looks at her and she's like, then I'll stay gladly. And she turned and she's like, my actual name is Silvara, not Silvart. That's what they call me. And she went back to the Sylvanesti warriors. It's like, Look at that colonialism right there. It's like these guys can't even be bothered to pronounce her real name.
Yeah.
They're just like, we're going to call you the equivalent in our language or something easier for us to say or anything like that. And we're just going to force you to deal with it because of the power here. The implications of colonialism and treating indigenous people is so strong here. And Lorana is like, no, I want to treat you as a human who is doing a favor to me, not as somebody who's doing, my bidding. Silvara is like, okay, well, you look actually sincere compared to the rest of these scrubs. We'll see if you actually are, But I think that's a really important lesson right there, too. It's just like, I mean, they're not subtle, but they're definitely interesting.
Yeah.
But that takes us to the end of chapter 2 of book 2 of Dragon of Winternight. And so with the next episode, we're going to be getting to chapter 3, where Lorana finally goes to meet the Qualinesi refugees. And that's going to be fun. So we will see how that goes. And with that, we're going to call this episode a close. You can find links to our socials in the show notes and to our Facebook group where we have people come and ask questions or discuss the episodes with us. And also, you can support us at Patreon at patreon.com/Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast. And with that, my friends, we will see you next time.
Later.
It's nothing we can't fix in post.
But as if I know how to fix anything in post.
We record these so infrequently, I'm like, don't want to accidentally do the intro to my other shows.